Every camera enthusiast knows that feeling. It is late at night, you are scrolling through forums, reading rumors, comparing old leaks with new ones, and wondering whether this could finally be the year Nikon introduces the camera you have been waiting for. For many Nikon users, that camera has a very simple name, the Nikon Z6 IV. The problem is that the Nikon Z6 IV does not officially exist yet. There has been no announcement from Nikon, no official specification sheet, no confirmed launch event, and certainly no verified release date. Depending on which rumor you believe, the camera may still be much further away than many people expect. Yet interest in the Nikon Z6 IV continues to grow because the previous generation showed just how much potential the series has. The Z6 III demonstrated that Nikon was willing to take the Z6 lineup in a more ambitious direction, and now photographers naturally want to know what the company could do next. The question is no longer simply whether Nikon can improve the camera. It is whether Nikon can make the next generation good enough to justify the wait. Before getting into rumored specifications, it is important to separate realistic expectations from internet speculation. A lot of information surrounding future cameras gets repeated so many times that it eventually starts sounding like confirmed information. That is especially true when one rumor is copied by another website, then discussed on YouTube, then quoted by a forum user, and eventually presented as if several independent sources have confirmed the same thing. With the Nikon Z6 IV, that is exactly why caution is necessary. There are plenty of predictions about what Nikon could introduce, but very few details can currently be treated as established fact. What we can do, however, is look at Nikon's recent engineering direction, the technology already appearing in its newest cameras, and the areas where the Z6 III still leaves room for improvement. That gives us a much more realistic picture of what a future Nikon Z6 IV could become. One of the biggest questions concerns the sensor. The Z6 III already introduced an unusual partially stacked sensor design, giving the camera considerably faster readout performance than conventional sensors while helping Nikon maintain a balance between image quality, speed, and cost. For the next generation, expectations naturally point toward further development of that concept. Rather than simply increasing resolution dramatically, Nikon could focus on creating a sensor in the neighborhood of 30 to 33 megapixels while maintaining the fast readout characteristics that made the Z6 III so interesting. A move in that direction would make sense because it would give photographers additional cropping flexibility without turning the camera into a high-resolution specialist that sacrifices speed. For landscape photographers, commercial shooters, portrait photographers, and even wildlife users, additional resolution can be extremely useful. A higher resolution sensor gives you more freedom when reframing an image after capture, particularly when you are working with distant subjects or when changing the composition in post-production. At the same time, Nikon would need to ensure that additional pixels do not negatively affect high ISO performance, dynamic range, burst performance, or video capabilities. The real challenge for the Nikon Z6 IV would therefore not be simply increasing megapixels. It would be finding the right balance between resolution and overall performance. Autofocus could be another major area of development. Nikon has made enormous progress with subject detection and tracking across its recent mirrorless lineup. Cameras such as the Z8 and Z9 demonstrated that Nikon could compete at the highest level in autofocus performance, while newer models have continued to benefit from improved recognition algorithms and processing. A future Nikon Z6 IV would almost certainly be expected to build on that progress. The next step may not simply be recognizing whether the subject is a person, animal, vehicle, or bird. The bigger improvement could come from predicting where that subject is going and maintaining focus more intelligently as the movement becomes unpredictable. That kind of improvement would be particularly valuable for wildlife and sports photographers. A bird suddenly changing direction, a cyclist moving across the frame, or an athlete accelerating toward the camera can challenge even an excellent autofocus system. Better prediction could allow the Nikon Z6 IV to maintain focus more consistently in those situations. Nikon would not necessarily need to completely reinvent its autofocus system. Instead, improving processing power, detection algorithms, and tracking behavior could make the existing system noticeably more responsive and dependable. Processing power will therefore be closely connected to almost every other rumored improvement. Modern cameras are no longer dependent on the sensor alone. The processor determines how quickly the camera can analyze autofocus information, recognize subjects, process images, manage noise reduction, record high-resolution video, and maintain overall responsiveness. A newer generation processor could allow Nikon to push the Z6 series further without dramatically changing the physical design. Faster processing could also improve menu responsiveness, burst shooting, buffer management, electronic viewfinder performance, and the camera's ability to handle demanding video formats. Video is another area where the Nikon Z6 IV could become particularly interesting. Nikon has increasingly demonstrated that it does not want its mirrorless cameras to be divided into simple categories such as stills cameras and video cameras. The company has been moving toward a more integrated approach, particularly as its relationship with RED has expanded Nikon's presence in the cinema world. RED's influence could eventually affect how Nikon approaches color science, RAW recording, workflow, and professional video features across more of its lineup. For now, though, the smartest approach is to separate confirmed information from speculation, watch for genuine developments, and avoid treating every confident-looking rumor as fact. The camera does not officially exist yet, and until Nikon says otherwise, every specification and release date remains subject to change. But if Nikon is willing to take its time and get the fundamentals right, that wait may ultimately be what makes the Nikon Z6 IV worth talking about. And when the real announcement finally arrives, the question will no longer be whether the camera was worth waiting for. We will finally get to see whether Nikon used that extra time to build something genuinely special.